Hello and welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, I'll be bringing some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage on Monocle Radio. This week, Habemus Papam, the new Pope is revealed.
Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, isn't your typical American Pope.
Plus, a look at the top 5 songs in Portugal this week.
Bloco de notas violeta, estrela não cometa, incompreendido porque eu vim de outro planeta. Noite eu sou vampiro e vou roubar teu coração.
All that and much more in the next hour, here on The Curator, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. The smoke went up, the bells rang out, and St. Peter's Square did what it does best, looked like the set of a medieval drama. But this time out walked a man born in Chicago, who built his priesthood in Peru, and now answers to the name Pope Leo XIV, the first US-born pope. Not that he's shouting about it, he speaks Spanish, tweets like a progressive, and is already being called a Francis 2.0. So is this a bold new chapter for the Church, or just a change in accent? And what does any of this actually mean for the 1.3 billion Catholics watching from the pews, not the piazza? We were joined from our studio in Zurich by journalist and broadcaster and former Vatican correspondent Juliet Linley.
In a changing world, in a world that has become so full of uncertainty, if there's one thing that hasn't changed, it's so many of these centuries-old rituals of the Catholic Church. And whether you're Catholic or not, you can't help but be impressed and even overwhelmed by all that it represents. I mean, yesterday, just watching, I think someone was saying like 90 to 100,000 people had crowded into the area of St. Peter's, Via della Conciliazione, all the surrounding areas, to get a glimpse of this momentous time in history when, for the first time, the world has an American Pope. But Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, isn't your typical American Pope. Whatever that might mean is certainly that he is not il più americano degli americani, as the Italians say. He's spent 20 years in Peru. He's even got a Peruvian passport. And I am sure that it's no coincidence that when the cardinals inside the conclave were deciding upon him, the fact that he is American makes a difference nowadays, but the fact that he has such a global background. He speaks 6 languages fluently. It's no coincidence as well that in his speech, when he was there at the balcony, looking very emotional, you could see he was a little close to tears at some point, looking down and waving at the faithful and everyone who had gathered there. He chose not to speak in English. He spoke in Italian and then he switched to Spanish, Georgina. Very symbolic, this.
White smoke came after just 4 ballots. I mean, that's relatively quick. Does it suggest that Leo XIV had wide support from the start? Was there a sense of unity in the College of Cardinals?
I don't know whether it was from the very start, if people started changing their positions pretty fast, though. I mean, all the names that we were hearing were, is it going to be an Italian Pope? Is it going to be someone in the line of continuity, as in Cardinal Parolin, who was the number 2 of Pope Francis? We were not hearing a lot about any American cardinals, let alone this one, simply because for the longest time there was an unwritten rule that said you can't have an American Pope. You have to have someone who is, well, until 47 years ago, they were often Italian. But there was very much the feeling that because America was very much the superpower, you couldn't also have a superpower, in inverted commas, Pope. The idea would have been that perhaps then Washington, D.C. or even Langley were pulling the strings within the church. But things have changed now. And he is American, but he is not let's get this clear, he is not a MAGA American Pope. He is not the kind of Pope that the Catholics who voted for Trump would have wanted to see in position.
Well, in fact, I mean, he has on his social media accounts criticised the MAGA movement and J.D. Vance in particular.
Very much so. And he's specifically gone in hard against the Trump administration's immigration policies. And also, remember, J.D. Vance is Catholic. He recently converted to Catholicism, I think 6 or 7 years ago. And J.D. Vance, in one of his public discourses, tried to say that the U.S. policy on immigration was sort of linked to a Christian way of thinking, which is first take care of your closest, your nearest and dearest, your family, then your community, then your own country, and then people from other countries. And Prevost at the time went in hard against him and said, no, that is not what Christian teaching is all about. And remember that in his speech yesterday, Leo XIV emphasized building bridges over walls. Clearly a critique of Trump's immigration policies and Trump's wanting to build walls.
There is one place where he and Vance come together, and that's on abortion. The new Pope's stance on gender and sexuality has also been much more conservative than Francis's tone. Do you think that will disappoint Catholics hoping for movement on LGBTQ inclusion or women's leadership and indeed the whole abortion issue?
Very true. He's not been very vocal on those hot-button issues, and he certainly has a conservative stance, very much aligned with traditional Catholic doctrine on, as you said, perhaps same-sex family structures, on having women priests. He's criticized homosexual lifestyles. But remember that he emphasizes compassion and inclusion, very much as Francis did. He's committed to social justice, to immigrants. He's committed to bringing in those who are on the peripheries, if you want. And don't forget that Francis did not make any doctrinal changes when it came to those more liberal aspects. And therefore, that might be something that'll keep the conservatives within the church perhaps more happy, if you want, because you know very well there is such a big division within the church today between those conservatives and the more progressives. And this might be a way of keeping both camps happy, you know.
We head to Germany now. In Berlin, Friedrich Merz has finally made it to the Chancellery, and is wasting no time in visiting Emmanuel Macron in Paris. The French are hoping for a reset. Relations under Olaf Scholz were frosty at best, and the Merz area may offer a new chapter, though he arrives slightly battered from an embarrassing parliamentary hiccup. So can Merz steady the ship at home and revive Europe's core alliance abroad? We were joined by Nina dos Santos, international broadcast correspondent and the former CNN Europe editor.
Well, he's choosing France, but he's also choosing Warsaw as well. He's determined to make it very obvious that there are these other axes of control inside the EU, but also that Germany is supposed to be back in the leadership seat. As you just pointed out in your introduction, he's arriving somewhat hobbled, and he's likely to try and make a grander figure on the international stage than he is back home, where obviously now, given the fact that he's had this embarrassing parliamentary setback, an historically embarrassing one, the first time that any German chancellor that supposedly had stitched together a coalition with enough of a majority just to rubber stamp his chancellorship and wave it through, well, he was beaten at the first attempt. There had to be a hastily reconvened vote on the same day to make sure that these visits to Paris and also Warsaw and then later on in Brussels weren't actually cancelled. What they're trying to do is to say that Europe is back on the map. Germany is back in the leadership seat, as I said, at a time when, of course, Donald Trump is very keen to engage in a trade war with Europe and also to remove US security guarantees from this part of the world.
So the personal chemistry between Scholz and Macron was infamously absent. Do we know what kind of rapport Merz has with Macron or how it might develop and why it matters so much?
Well, the Franco-German axis is the traditional economic power axis that drives Europe, and lots of EU diplomats, particularly from some of the southern European states I've been speaking to over the last couple of months, have become increasingly frustrated with the absence of German leadership, particularly under Olaf Scholz's three-way traffic light coalition that appeared to have to abstain on really important EU decisions that normally Germany under Angela Merkel's time would have been in the driving seat for. And that ill-prepared Europe to deal with, on the one hand, the war in Ukraine, and also, secondly, the trade war that's coming from America. So Friedrich Merz is very keen to say, well, look, I'm a former lawyer, corporate business person. I can look somebody like Donald Trump in the eye and stand up to him as representing a bloc of 450 million potential consumers that has its own huge power base. But obviously, there will continue to be lots of voices from back home in Germany that say, well, look, you promised the stability solidarity that Olaf Scholz's government couldn't deliver. But now it appears as though your hand wasn't as strong as you originally claimed. So I suppose he's going to have this mismatch internationally and domestically.
Well, as you say, Germany likes to be seen as the rock of European stability. And I wonder if the Bundestag drama, which was not the smooth handover he'd hoped for, damages his ability to lead in Brussels or to be taken seriously by other heads of government.
Well, it depends who exactly voted against him. So if we circle back and look at what exactly happened dramatically early in the morning as he was sitting there in Parliament waiting for this sort of rubber stamping of his chancellorship after having rushed through coalition negotiations. This is one of the things that's irked people on his own party's side. He stitched together a government very ruthlessly, quite quickly in 2 months. Normally in Germany it could take up to several months. So that was deemed by some on his own Christian Democratic Union party to have been too swift a deal where he gave up too much ground, giving 7 cabinet positions to the centre-left Social Democrats, despite the fact that they came in third position in February's elections, having had one of their worst showings in about a century. So it might be that there were some CDU members of his own party that were responsible for this particular rebellion, not so much the centre-left that are part of the other side of the coalition. And I'm sure that obviously the whips inside his party will be trying to figure out who those dissenters are. He lost the first vote by 6 votes. He managed to get through on the second one, but only by 9, which by my calculations is still a couple short of his majority with the 2 parties inside Parliament. And so what that shows is that all of these grand plans that he has, so this big debt-fueled spending splurge to revive the German economy, his plans to try and shore up support for Ukraine, to protect Germany's borders, particularly against asylum seekers, it's going to be very hard to enact all of that if your hand has been showed to be quite so weak back home.
You are listening to The Curator, Monocle Radio, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. This week, of course, was the Met Gala. I had the pleasure to speak with the owner of a New York institution, the Mark Hotel. The hotel on the Upper East Side was preparing, of course, to host the stars of the Met Gala. Here it is, Isaac Sembahar.
It's multifaceted. We can take a lot of credit for it, but, geography has a lot to do with it. We are the closest hotel to the Met in terms of geographically. So that you got to understand this. Most of the talent are dressing with very elaborate, big outfits, which doesn't do well with travel, meaning, it's tough to come here with those kind of outfits from downtown. So basically we have that advantage. And early on, we have understood that we have that advantage and we started catering to them. And throughout the year, we have it pat down. We know what they need. We know how the departures, the logistics are really, really hard because you have 50 to 60 talent and they're all going to the same place at the same time and there's 60 cars waiting for them. And the elevators, you can't fit more than 2 people or 3 people because the dresses and everything is so basically we have to give everybody a slot on the elevator. So we have people in each floor that's directing this, which with the right car pulls up and so there's a lot of logistics that it's relied upon, that they rely upon us. So basically we deliver consistency, immediate service, whatever they need in the last minute. We have everything you need in under one roof, whatever they need. And that kind of, it's more logistics, geography, than glam. And, we have that every day. But in the Met Gala, we deliver logistics and we deliver practicality. That also leads to an after party type of thing, because what happens, most people don't eat much before and they don't eat much during the Met Gala. So we have the first after party is usually in our place where we serve, mostly they like hot dogs and French fries. And
always the hot dogs.
Yeah, because they're hungry. And no, we offer a lot more, but the parties are fun. So we usually, the party scene goes like everybody comes back to change and go to the first party, and they hang around till 12 or 1, and then they go to other parties. So basically we have got that down, to perfection almost. And so we deliver consistency, and that's what people need at that point.
And going back to what you said as earlier in the interview about the city of New York and the connection of someone who goes there and visit, if you go to the Mark Hotel website, there's so many information about, life with the Mark, what can you do around the city. I feel very much that it's not just for people perhaps who are staying there, but it's something that New Yorkers can enjoy as well, right? Including yourself, a resident nearby.
No, look, it's all from the get-go. When I took the challenge and I said, look, what makes a successful place and a place which has which can last long, right? Because we're not doing something for a year or two. So I figured it has got to be a hub. Like, everybody comes for a reason. Let's say you come to stay because you need to be in New York. I want people to come there to the genre. Let's go back to what I say to they don't like it when I say it. I like a 3-ring circus. And they say, oh, we're not a ring, we're not a circus. And, but what we are, because, we're in entertainment, and people by and large have short time, like attention, like the span attention. It's just people need to be entertained in a quick fashion and not just. So basically, I always think that if you bring enough things under one roof and you are entertaining people, that's why. Okay, we have Jean-Georges, which does the room service and gives you your whatever the 3-star Michelin menu plus the perks of pizzas and burgers and whatever have you. And then, for example, we have Caviar Caspia, which is a different venue, which people come for. For brunch. The brunch is great. They come for anniversaries, birthdays, celebrations. A lot of fashion business uses it as their canteen, let's say. There are a lot of parties. So what happens is now what Michelle was telling you, I guess now we have a clam bar on Madison, which looks like an East Long Island clam bar. And so now there's an excitement around that. So basically our job is to create excitement every day. So, if you want to come and have a lobster roll, it's right there. And, you want to have some clams, it's right there. It's outdoors. It's all red, very eye-catching.
We're proud to support the craft of journalism. UBS brings you the latest news from around the world. Be part of an international network that brings together leading insights, research, and technology across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the center of it all. UBS. Banking is our craft.
You are listening to The Curator, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And now, from the menu, we pick our wine of the month. Are you curious? Tune in.
Chloe, welcome back. Very, very happy to have you here today because this is one of my favorite kinds of wine. And I think I'm not alone in saying that because we all know that people have been kind of discovering and appreciating this kind of wine so much more recently. Why do you think we've suddenly all grown so fond of orange wine?
That's a great question. So orange wine itself, or as they call it in Georgia, where we're going today, is known really as amber wine. And Georgia has a very ancient history of winemaking. In fact, in 2015, a group of scientists went over there and found these ancient clay jars, which are known as quavery, that kind of ferment the wine. And it dated back to 8,000 years old. So it's been a long time coming of people enjoying this style.
As far as kind of slow burners go.
It's a slow burn. And I think it faded maybe from popular consciousness for a while, and people are bringing back these ancient methods and really kind of advocating for them. And people are really interested in that. They want something different. So I think, yeah, it's coming to the forefront. And it can be a very interesting style. There are so many flavors that you can get from it. Yeah, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, I think that orange is much appreciated now, but also for a long time, I think much misconstrued in the sense that people thought that it was quite kind of mono note and frequently eschewed it because they thought it's going to be too funky, and I'm not really into that. But actually, as with every single other kinds of wine, it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can have what people would call funky. You can have cleaner orange wines. It all depends on how they're made, how long the grapes have been in contact with, the juice has been in contact with the skins. Yeah, it's a real varied pool, I think. Yeah.
And I suppose, where does Georgia's most traditional kind of orange, or amber rather, sit compared to other orange wines worldwide?
I think Georgian orange wines or amber wines, you'd expect maybe more of that fuller body, that nuttier flavor, really, really deep. They love to kind of macerate the skins for a really long time. Sometimes they throw the seeds in there as well, so you get a bit of tannin, which you maybe wouldn't expect as much from like a white or an orange, but there's a lot of that in there too. And what makes orange wine specifically different from the rest of the world are these amazing clay vessels that they use called quavery that I've mentioned. And they're buried underground in these enormous cellars called morani, and chucked in with all of this stuff, left to ferment for months, and then moved into another one of these clay vessels. So you're kind of getting a little bit of the indigenous yeasts are part of the fermentation. It's all very natural, and I think that's where it's a little bit different. It's not kind of in a stainless steel tank, or it's in contact with a bit of oxygen, and that changes the flavor of the wine, as opposed to maybe other orange wines around the world.
I think it's really interesting. I was in Tbilisi not too long ago, actually, and the vast majority of wines there, even the so-called whites, do kind of veer towards the redder end of the spectrum. So it really is all a matter of perception. I wonder how orange the wine that we have in front of us actually will be. Please, can you tell us what's in the bottle and proceed to perhaps pour it for us to judge the gradient of the orange in front of us?
Yeah, it's not a super deep orange amber color. It's maybe on the lighter side, but I don't think it packs any less of a punch. I think we have something that tastes of a lot of different things, which is very exciting. And it's made by someone called Iago Bitorshvili, and he's the owner of the estate currently. His family have owned the land for, I think, about 20 years, and he only grows Chinori, which is this indigenous grape variety to Georgia that we're going to be trying today. And everything is fermented in that terracotta quervi that I was telling you about. So I think we should get something that tastes very much like Georgian wines did in the past, because he uses very traditional methods. So yeah, very excited. Let's pour it.
Yes, please. It's probably golden, straw-like, something like that.
I'd say it's fitting the amber hue. I know this sounds a little gross, but I can almost imagine ants being in there in like resin.
Yeah.
It has that kind of museum
Jurassic
color
Park
preservation. Yeah.
What about the nose?
To me, that smells a little honey. I don't know what you're getting, but a little bit of honey.
It's quite bright, actually.
Yeah.
You know, having spoken about how much like amber it looks, it doesn't smell quite as resiny on the nose. So I think that it's in color, but perhaps not so much in the...
Absolutely. And I think that's also a common misconception with amber wines, is that they have this very strong look, and therefore they're also going to have a really strong or funky taste. But it's not always the case. The nose can be different from the taste for sure. Yeah, it's a little bit honeyed, a little bit oranged. Kind of nutty too, maybe. Shall we taste it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think it's time.
I think it's time.
And from The Urbanist this week, we begin the episode in Mexico to explore the visionary works of Luis Barragan, the only Mexican architect to win the Pritzker Prize. From a hidden convent chapel that transforms sunlight into religious rituals, to a stable ranch about to become one of Mexico City's most exciting new cultural centers, Verity de Cala spoke to the architects and nuns, keeping Barragan's legacy alive, to explore what made his work so iconic and how his ideas continue to shape the city and global architecture.
For many, the Capuchin Chapel is Barragan's greatest example of his unique ability to merge spirituality with architectural form. So where better place to start? In Tlalpan, south of Mexico City, myself along with a small group of keen tourists wait outside a plain stucco wall on a quaint cobbled street. Unassuming facades are typical of Barragan's work, and nothing really hints that one of his most seminal works sits just behind. At 10 a.m. sharp, one of the chapel's nuns opens the doors, holds out a basket to place our phones in, and we enter into the courtyard. No recordings or photos are allowed, not even audio. In the patio, purple bougainvilleas tumbled down the walls, and a black stone fountain reflected the sky. Alongside the fountain, a cement lattice wall painted yellow threw a pattern of rays on the inner corridor. Already the light and reflections gave the place a sense of serenity. As the nuns took us through to the main chapel, she explained that it was consecrated in 1960, after 7 years of planning and building. Barragan was deeply religious, and much of his work was inspired by the stillness and the iconography of the iglesias in Mexico. This is the reason Barragan paid for the project, only asking that the sisters make food for the labourers. She said some of the nuns who were there then still live in the chapel now. In the chapel, natural but softened yellow light entered from the back through a concrete lattice wall painted yellow, casting sun-like rays across the room. A stronger light came in through a golden stained glass window, designed by sculptor Matías Goeritz. This light source, hidden from view, illuminated the large wooden cross from the side, projecting a 10-metre shadow of its form on the altar. As we gathered around again, the sister described how the compound was built in such a slant that it allowed the sunlight to reflect on specific areas at specific times. The altar, for example, is most bright in the early hours of the day, lighting up the room golden, and timed perfectly to the routine of the sisters' religious activities. I wanted to understand more about how Barragan was able to create such a strong sense of atmosphere, creating emotional reactions to his work.
So there's always this legend of Luis Barragan, of this poetic architect, that seems like, I don't know, he see a tree, he cries, and it's not like that.
I went to speak to architect and son of the owner of Barragan's final design, Martin Luque, at Casa Gilardi. He took me around the house and showed me some of the ways Barragan creates these different responses and how he influenced the architecture of inner city houses. We started in the entrance hall, which opens up to the main living space, featuring an indoor pool and brightly coloured walls that seem suspended over the water.
When you enter to the space, you don't know why you want to go to the other space. But in terms of design and architecture, what he's doing is that he's seducing you because of light. The point where we're standing is darker. If you walk into that other space, the saturation of light is going to be different. It's going to be more saturated. This yellow spectrum really grows on your side. But then, again, you are stopped by another pair of doors. So when this is closed, what happens is that you have no idea what is next. So you can see the pace, the cadence of how he is really taking you to the space. You are contained. So when your sight is fully prepared with this yellow spectrum, the next space is going to punch you in the face with color. That's what happens.
It literally punches you in the face.
There's an emotional reaction of people every time, and they don't know why. Because Luis Barragan forced you to feel first than thinking. That's difficult in architecture. So when you enter to the space, you see light, you see color, but you don't see windows. You don't see what you are supposed to see in a normal situation. Everything is a volume. But because of the section, he's hiding the windows from the visual perspectives or points. And he's forcing you to come all the way around and finding the tree in a frontal position. So this is what he's presenting you at the end. And when you go out on the patio, what you find is the presence of the tree with the shadows, with the flowers on the floor, and the movement of air on the leaves, and the high walls they are framing the sky.
Growing up in Guadalajara, Barragan was influenced by Moorish, rural nature and colonial architecture. He was not trained as an architect, but as a civil engineer, and spent some of his early career learning how to create functional and rational buildings. It was between the years of 1946 to 1978 that his most famous and more poetic work was created. And it was at the end of this period that Casa Gilardi was built. But how did Barragan's style evolve to what we see in Casa Gilardi and the work of that period?
So he was very clear about his practice. There is no manifesto, there is no theory behind. It's just a personal synthesis. But if there are three key elements in his mindset, they would be a very fine collection of books about human thinking, poetry, philosophy, sociology, art, religion, some of it architecture, but more focused to ancient architecture or popular architecture. That would be one point. The second point would be traveling a lot, learning by experiencing different contexts or environments, popular knowledge. And the third point would be to gather with the most important intellectual people of his time. This is how he built his universe.
Barragan's inner circle of influences included Mexican artist and antiques collector Chucho Reyes, Matias Cortes, sculptor and painter, dancer and choreographer Rosa Rolanda, among many, many others.
And Luis Barragan was very good at the most difficult thing, to do a synthesis, to be careful enough for paying attention to someone else's ideas, but make them your own. That's the hardest part of it. It seems like he had a pact with angels and muses, and that it was about grabbing a pencil and there you go, you have the house. It's not like that. Luis Barragan was a very hard-working person, very sensitive, but being sensitive is not enough. You need to read, you need to think, you need to save money for traveling, you need to save money for being on the right place at the right time, experimenting everything, talking with everyone. His design process was very interesting in terms of redoing and polishing and redefining or refining things. Luis Barragan was a very clever business guy, a urbanist, developer, gardener, designer, architecture designer, interior designer.
My final stop on this tour was to meet architect Fernando Romero to discuss his plans to turn La Cuadra, Barragan's modernist ranch, finished in 1968, into a large cultural centre, opening in October this year. We met at one of the houses Fernando is currently working on in Mexico City's leafy Las Lomas neighborhood.
This house was designed in the late stage of his career, but this was a project that he completely already thought in color, the pink walls, the pink wood, your identity, that in a way connects with the experiences of his childhood when he has been teenager's time. He was spending time in the haciendas, and the haciendas, the old traditional buildings in the surroundings of Mexico. And I think Barragan showed in Cuadras that he have achieved a level of mastery in terms of proportions and sizes and composition, right? It's a very special courtyard that I put it in the level of Brunelleschi or some of the most brilliant architects in the history of Renaissance architecture, because the proportions are simply sublimely perfect. And well, we have acquired the property with the idea of having a master plan where we will develop a site where, because there's adjacent free plot around the property, you can also build other pavilions with other great architects. So it's going to be transformed in a foundation where we are also building a collection on site. So we will start a program of artist residences this year. We will open an exhibition in the existing White House designed by Barragan, where we will showcase an exhibition of maquettes that has been designed by Jorge Covarrubias, and it's the first exhibition in Mexico dedicated fully to understand and experience and review the history of designs of Luis Barragan during his life through maquettes. It's the first permanent exhibition in Mexico dedicated to celebrate the evolution of the works of Luis Barragan and expand on the relationship between art and architecture. No?
And you've worked on like some major projects throughout Mexico, obviously. Sumaya is one of the big ones, the international airport. Why are you drawn to Barragan's work?
I think Barragan is more like a hero for us, no? Like somebody that has practiced in a completely different time. I think for me the inspiration is the capacity of Barragán to connect the local moment with the international style. He was able to kind of put together the international movement with the traditions in a mixer. He became always a kind of beautiful reference for us of the potential of how through exploration you can achieve something of greatness through design.
What do you want people to take away from visiting La Quadra in the long term? Like when they go there, what do you want them to kind of leave thinking?
Well, from the past, the last 30 years, the property has been visited only the courtyard. But from now on, is not only that experience, but also to have the educational opportunity to learn more about the evolution of that precise architect. And also, we will have then artists living on the property doing the collection, so you will have the opportunity to interact with young artists that are going to be on site producing their artworks. So we thought that will elevate the experience of the visit, will enable the visitors to also experience contemporary art, and I think that will be like an important asset that none other Barragán site will have, right? You went to Capuchinas?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
It is absolutely incredible.
I would love to go back. It's a masterpiece. Now we're in a conversation with priests to try to find a site to donate the chapel also. So I want to do the same. This is a cardinal who was running the Catholic Church for 30 years, here with the Pope Benedict. He's searching a site, ideally in the city, so there's so many places where you will need to build or increase the quality of their temples, no? But we still are waiting.
Let me know when you do.
Yeah, we'll know.
Fernando's plans to create a religious site inspired by the Chapel Capuchin is just one way Barragán's many works have had and will have a profound impact on the city's landscapes and architecture. His designs like Casa Gilardi redefined urban living, proving that even in a dense metropolis, quiet courtyards and sculptured light could carve out some serenity. Many students take a pilgrimage to Mexico City to study and be inspired, and his influence lingers in the projects of Mexico's most influential architects and landscape designers. Tatiana Bilbao's social housing borrows from his play of shadow, while Mario Shetnin's redesigns of the city parks echoes Barragán's belief that nature and the city's unique geodiversity must be woven into architecture. Barragán's designs remain a compass for how to build cities and homes that don't just function, but are filled with emotion as well.
You are with the curator, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And now, from Monocle Design, we decided to visit the Swedish homeware and furniture giant's newest retail location on London's Oxford Street. We're talking about IKEA, of course.
Decorations are tired. Look, your style is fired. It's like somebody hit you with a bulldozer. If your house was a car, it would get pulled over.
Standing here in the centre of London's busiest shopping street, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Londoners' flats were totally empty and that this is the first time anyone has ever been to an IKEA. It looks like there is a sea of blue bags. The Swedish furniture giant has just opened here in Oxford Street and we can't get enough of it. It feels like a fun fair.
I'm local, so I can come anytime I want. I live in Holloway, so I'm a local lady.
Are you happy that Oxford Circus is open?
Of course.
Why did you come here today? It's super hot and sunny outside.
Because I couldn't do it yesterday.
Why do you like IKEA?
Because it's nice stuff, it's affordable price, everything is organized nicely. So I mean, for me, you know, when I'm coming, I can say, oh, I need this.
My name's Adam, I'm from London. We took the afternoon off from work to come here today. I've been speaking about it to friends for genuinely weeks and months, saying when it opens, going.
What's on the list?
That's not the point. There's never anything on the list. That's why I've got an empty bag. And I did say to colleagues I was coming in, they said, you're going to buy loads of stuff. And I was like, no, I've got nothing to buy. They were like, no, you're going to buy loads of stuff.
This project was a year and a half behind schedule. The building itself cost £378 million before renovation, IKEA's biggest investment by far in a single shop. So there was relief when a queue of 400 people formed when the doors opened. Peter Jekelby is IKEA's retail manager for the UK and Ireland.
You never know. You really don't know. You of course, you guesstimate things, right? But I would say overall, no, beyond expectation, emotionally as well included. Open a store like this means a lot for everyone involved, particularly if you work quite hard to make it happen.
Trying to marshal the queues for the meatballs is Matt Gould, IKEA man and boy. At 27 years old, he's the company's youngest store manager and a shining, energetic example of why we should all want a career in retail. My goodness, Matt, how are you?
I think it's been an absolute incredible first 24 hours. Tired, of course, but running on full energy still today. Well, we saw yesterday, actually, quite an incredible turnout. Actually, the third highest visited IKEA store in Europe was yesterday. I think it was an absolute incredible, crazy day. The highlight was meatballs, was food. That's what everybody was dying for.
Is it really? Honestly?
Genuinely, all the first questions we were getting, have you got meatballs, hot dogs and chips?
But of course, if you spend less than £1, euro or dollar on something to eat, you'll no doubt feel flush enough to buy something for your home.
So don't let that doily just go and spoil everything. Chuck out that tin! Yes, chuck out that tin! Let's chuck out that tin today!
When the world's biggest furniture store first opened in the United Kingdom in 1987, a revolution happened to our houses. Before IKEA, British households decorated their rooms with family heirlooms. Our living rooms looked like our mother's living rooms, and her mother's living room before that.
Chuck out that chintz, come on, do it today. Rise off that pelmet and throw it away. Those sofas are girly, too silly, too twirly. That flowery bed, it just does you no credit.
The British, who love a bargain, gleefully welcomed this irresistible blend of value and style. Demonstrated perfectly here in an excerpt from the BBC radio comedy, I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue.
In this round, I'd like you to come up with phrases that might be suitable to use both in the bedroom and when buying or assembling things from IKEA.
If there's no screwing involved, I can't see how it's going to stay up.
To buy anything, you had to head to what IKEA staff fondly call the big blue box. But shopping habits changed. IKEA had to make the central London site work. To do this, two big design problems had to be solved. First, how to make a traditional high street space look and feel like an IKEA. And secondly, how to make what was on offer work for fast-moving Londoners in tiny flats. First was the scaling down of the store, as Matt explains.
We're talking about 5,300 square metres we're working with.
What were the priorities in terms of the way you design the layouts? Because the spaces that we're looking at don't look much bigger than the average London room. Is that a principle that you've adhered to?
It is. In essence, it is. We still have, of course, some larger room sets as well. But as a majority, we are trying to work with the reality of our Londoners here.
And in terms of feeling like an IKEA, they'd learned some lessons from their first foray here in the UK into inner city stores with a branch in Hammersmith.
We went with what we called free flow, so we allowed customers to navigate however they wanted. And of course, people in IKEA actually like to be told where to go. The learning we took here into Oxford Street was that customers want arrows, they want to be steered where to go, they want to go through the areas of the home. What we've now put back into the stores is what we call our one-way flow system.
The adverts on the tube are very much of people being able to carry things away. I mean, this feels like a very different IKEA. Looks the same, but it's not remotely the same.
You'll see snippets of actually real London homes. So what we mean by that is that there will be, where we've got the window displays, as you pull the blind up, there'll be a shot of actually a London Victorian house in the background.
Much of what's on sale here can fit into one of IKEA's blue bags. Expect to see tea lights and duvet sets on the tube. Anything bigger has to be delivered, either to your home or a drop-off point in the capital. And IKEA is also having to rethink its designs to cater for London living.
People move so many more times now, so the range that we're now starting to design, the new range that comes in, we will have a new Pax wardrobe that will come very soon, that will be much more easier to dismantle actually, and then reassemble.
Wallets are thinner these days, and our tiny flats are crammed with too much stuff. How does Peter Yeckelby then reconcile this with sales targets?
Today also consumers are becoming more wary how to live a sustainable life, that we are smart with that to save money, to save energy.
You talk about sustainability, but this is the great paradox that no one has ever quite been able to resolve with IKEA. That you talk an awful lot about sustainability, you use sustainable produce, you have ambition to be net zero faster than practically anybody else on this earth. But at the heart of your business model is selling things that sometimes we don't need.
I would say all our products has a purpose and a function. Then you might not need it at that particular time or whatever. But to answer your question, in the long run, we know that when it comes to selling at volumes, we know that all the materials we are bringing into our products needs to be recyclable or sustainably produced. And I think this thing about selling to you means that you should be able to recycle it. We should have been produced it in a sustainable way. We should maybe even be able to take it back as we do, reshop, reuse. So I think that's a circularity for us, and it is something we will crack.
This place is a mess. Disgusting. No, you don't deserve no gas.
While other companies fret about going online and the flood of cheap imports from China, Oxford Circus is the first of a bigger expansion into high streets for IKEA. At least they are betting on town centres and the people who live in them. And for summer 2025, meanwhile, London's It bag is big and blue with yellow handles. For Monocle, in London, I'm Emma Nelson.
Silence the critics. IKEA, the wonderful everyday.
Fresh and clean.
And finally, as Monocle hosted a special spring market in partnership with Visit Portugal in our London headquarters, I decided to do the global countdown from Portugal, looking at the top 5 songs this week from the country.
It is Thursday, and that jingle means it's time now for the Global Countdown with our senior correspondent and musical curator, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Good afternoon. Hola, Fernando.
Hola, Chris. I'm enjoying your Portuguese. You're really doing well. Muito bom.
Obrigado. I'm really working very hard on this. I'm going to have to add a few more words other than hello and thank you at some point. You know, Faye, that I did go to Portugal and Lisbon for the first time last month, so I'm excited about this.
And I think you were smiling after it as well.
I was smiling. I was smiling.
Can I be honest? I love going to Portugal. Of course, Brazil and Portugal are very connected. I just love spending a weekend in Lisbon because I like the quality of life there, you know, to have a bifana, which is the steak sandwiches, or, you know, have an imperial in your hand, which is the name they give, to like a little cup of beer. I just enjoy it. The weather is amazing. I have friends there. It's a country that makes me happy, even musically.
And I was going to say, musically, what is the difference? Is there a difference? How does Portuguese music compare to Brazilian music?
I think it's very different. I think one big difference, and we'll see with the top 5 songs, they're quite open to other countries in the Lusophone world. I mean, there are a lot of artists from Angola, from Brazil. You know what I mean? I think Portugal is a way where all those artists meet in a way as well. I think in Brazil, maybe we don't have so many Portuguese artists or artists from Angola. It's more of a
more inward looking, is it?
Slightly more inward, of course, because of the size of our country as well. But I just love looking at the charts. And of course, we're hosting a special spring market here in the office on Saturday. So I said, it's a good excuse to bring some Portuguese music, right?
Here at Midori House, we are bringing Portugal to London.
I made a playlist for it as well. And by the way, the Portuguese only have Portuguese artists, so there's some old-time classics. We're going to hear new music.
We're going to hear new music. Is any of this going to make the playlist? Has it made the playlist?
Well, maybe not quite, because not all of them are Portuguese, including number 5, which is a very sunny track. They love sunny music in Portugal, like the weather. This is a German South African singer. His name is Wiz the MC, and this song is just doing so well on social media, and I can understand why, because it's good vibes all around.
Summer vibes.
Let's have a listen to Wiz the MC and Bees and Honey, which are from Berlin and London, with Show Me Love.
Show me that don't need no money, don't need nobody, just need your body. Hey, hey. Show me that so sweet like honey, don't need no talking, just need your body. Hey,
hey. German South African number 5 in Portugal. That in itself is enough to be interesting.
And it matches as well, the country. And of course, you can hear the amapiano of the sound. The amapiano is this distinctive South African music style, which is kind of a mix of deep house, jazz, a little bit of lounge music as well. South Africa, it's incredible. And finally, their music are kind of dominating the charts around the world as well.
Getting some recognition there. What do we have at number 4?
a Portuguese artist. In fact,
here we are.
A record-breaking Portuguese artist, because when he released his 5th album, he still has that record on Spotify of the most listened Portuguese album in one day ever. I mean, he's a big guy. He was born in Cascais. He does have Mozambican heritage. I was telling you that Portugal is the place where everyone meets in their way.
I think I stayed in Cascais.
See? You know, maybe you've seen Plutónio walking around.
If only I had known.
This is number 4, Plutónio with Interestelar.
Bloco de notas violetas, estrela e não cometa. Incompreendido porque eu vim de outro planeta. Noite eu sou vampiro e vou roubar teu coração. De dia os óculos escuros para não roubar a visão. Romeu com muito mais paleta, várias Julietas. Cada vez que eu troco o caos e feito borboleta. Vai dar-lhes perdão que eles não sabem o que eles são. Não vi seguir tendências, siga a minha intuição. Por isso hoje eu vou lá.
Gosh, I might need to add the song to the Portuguese market playlist.
You have just decided that might need to be one. That was a very catchy one, I'll give you that.
It does rhyme very well. Big fan of Plutónio here.
Very nice, and I'm sort of picturing him walking along the Cascais waterfront, which I visited as well, so maybe I spotted him there. That's a good one. What do we have at number 3?
It's a little bit of a downer here, but I have to be open. I try to be, I think there's taste for everything in the world. His name is...
We need the uppers and the downers, Faye.
We do need the down. It's quite a downer song as well, but listen, he did have a very tough life, so, good on him. He became a pop star. In fact, I think Alex Warren define what a pop star is today. It's not necessarily like a label kind of thinking behind and making, you have to release this single, then this one, like we used to know. Sometimes I think the music industry today is very random in the way those people, they become mega stars. Alex Warren at number 3, I think this is the kind of music the algorithms want us to listen to. The song's called Ordinary.
Of the ordinary, I want you laying me down to the dead and buried on the edge of your knife, staying drunk on your vibe.
I like, Fernando, that after all of that description of basically that this song is kind of meh, you then gave the title Ordinary.
Ordinary. It is a bit ordinary, but listen, Alex Warren, tough life, good on him, he's young, it's the way the music industry works.
We wish Alex Warren all the best from Fernando. What do we have at number 2? Are you more excited about this one?
Well, I'm excited because it is from my country, Brazil. I'm glad the Portuguese are listening to Brazilian music, but it's also a little bit of a crazy song. I mean, I think
this is not the one you would have recommended from Brazil.
No, I wouldn't say it's the best specimen of Brazilian music. Nevertheless, people like it. I think there's an element of fun. I think if you have an Imperial in your hand, you can certainly shake your hips with that. This is MC Davi. It's very long, okay, the number of artists. MC Davi, MCG15, J Skinny, DJ and Batidão Stronda with Mãe Solteira, which means single mom.
Chama o Skinny, o Davi, que eu vou batizar. Ela pede benção, benção, ela pede benção pro papai. Ela pede benção, benção, ela pede benção pro papai. Ela pede benção, benção, ela pede benção pro papai. I love you, mãe solteira, que é gostosa demais. Ela pede benção, benção, ela pede benção pro papai. Ela pede benção.
Is this a bunch of guys singing about how they love single moms?
Yeah, which is great. He even says, I can even have your baby on my car. I don't mind, So he's very open-minded about that. So very good on that. But it is odd. It is an odd track, okay? I'm from Brazil.
It is a little odd. Are these like the best of Brazil? Why so many names in one song?
God, I think that's the trend these days. I mean, I think every song you need to get all artists together. And number 5. Our number 1 song, there's only 2 of them.
Okay. We've gone back down to number 2. Where is this one from?
And this is a very interesting one. DJ Malvado is from Angola. And Angola is such a musical country. We do have some Angolan artists here on the playlist. It's very musical. They have their own style of kind of Afro House, they have Kuduro and much more. And this track, I love it. It screams summer. Even the name of the track relates to summer, but we'll talk about it after we listen to this. DJ Malvado and DJ AKM with Musulo. it. It's kind of loungy, but you can shake. I can imagine you're going to be in a sunny place. Well, and that sunny place will be Musulo, which is an island. I think it's south of Luanda, and that's a very typical, tourist destination in the country. So imagine yourself having a nice drink in Musulo, listening to DJ Malvado.
It does sound pretty delightful. So DJ Malvado for the Monocle playlist and Plutonio for the Portuguese market playlist.
Done.
Is that what we might be thinking?
Absolutely. And that's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by David Stevens and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week, and thank you for listening.